This episode is sponsored by Zenro Clothing Co. Pick up your tees and or accessories at zenroclothingco.com and be sure to use offer code Socrates at checkout for 20% off select items. Also, if you're not into spending the money, just check out the Zenrail radio playlist. zenrailclothingco.com, music for your everyday. This episode also sponsored by The Portian Bakery. If you're located in the Portian area of Scarborough, Toronto, be sure to check out The Portian Bakery, say what's up to Arville, and pick up a donut or two. Baked daily, crafted with love. This episode also sponsored by Podbean. Podbean is the podcasting platform of choice. It's the one that me and Vish use, and is great, you know, if you're looking to start that DIY podcast yourself. Definitely check out Podbean. Use the link podbean.com/SocraticGamers and gain 1 month of unlimited podcasting for free. Test it out, build that content. Anyone could podcast, right, Vish?
Yep.
Start a podcast and get your ideas out there. All right, enjoy the episode. All right, I think we'll start with this training that I had to do. I was like mentioning it to you guys, and I was like, I didn't know that there's actually exact definitions for everything that we're. All right, so remember that big thing before where like as they're trying to define like different genders. Remember, and the big thing was like, well, if you identify as like a female, but you're a male, that could like it's totally fine in terms of, you know, your superficial level where it's like, okay, well, how do you see yourself? A perspective, right? Mm-hmm. But when it comes to like science, or like how's that going to affect like the medicine, right? So it turns out that they actually did differentiate the two, and I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. It's like it's down to like sex and gender, but gender is what that whole LGBTQ 2S thing is. Mm-hmm. 2S plus. So anyways, so like they broke down all these different things, and it's interesting how before we only had like one definition of like you're like heterosexual and you're a male. You know what I mean? Like it was kind of like that was your identity before, right? And then now, if you're heterosexual and you're a male and you identify as a male, they consider you like cisgendered. Yeah. So it's like an actual like term now, mm-hmm. You know, like they've like defined everything so specifically that you can fall into whichever category. So like trans doesn't actually mean somebody who's like transitioning, but it's like you have two identity, like male, female within you. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. And the one that really was fascinating to me was the plus. So what they did with this is if you have the plus, it means that if it doesn't fall into any of these categories, then you can just be added to. That's why they add the plus. Mm-hmm. So remember the person in like US who's like fox kid? Or like I identify as a fox. Okay. Yeah. So he would fall under the plus, mm-hmm. which is like, it really made me think from the perspective of online worlds, mm-hmm. you know, because like it's almost like it's positioning us, or like positioning our frame of reference in a way that's like when we go online, if you're like an ogre, you know what I mean, but what is your sex? Because like in the real world, like what like we need for biology, mm-hmm. you know, so there's like a biological like male and female, but then like other than that, it's like whatever you want at this point. Mm-hmm. You know, fascinating. Yeah. Right? Because it's like, do you see what I mean? Where as we do this in our world, because now we have the ability to like actually change into the other gender. Mm-hmm. You know, like but before it was like when we were kids, it was so difficult to transition in from male to female or vice versa, right? But now we have the technology that actually allows you to do this, mm-hmm. right? And then we see that there are like elves now. Did you see that one where like I think it was like an Asian person or a white person, can't remember, but they were like turning themselves into an elf through like plastic surgery.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
No, but like
I haven't seen that.
Yeah. Oh, you haven't seen that? Okay. So with that, it's like, okay, you just fall into the plus mm-hmm. now. And it's like how it's almost like it's not real anymore. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like mm-hmm. Before these identification states were a thing, and then so many people were like, well, I don't want to fall into your stereotype now, So now we're just like, whatever, you know? Even things like non-binary, right? I don't consider, like, binary is like one or the other. So they're like, oh, I don't consider myself one or the other. So it's like, you'd fall under that camp, you know? But like, how do you move forward with this? You know what I mean? Like, all I was thinking, like what is the simplest way to, because like as I was doing the training, I was like, okay, you're making this really, like I had to memorize all these definitions. I was like, oh, this is a lot now. And then if you keep adding to it, it's going to be more and more. So it's like, it's almost like just do whatever you want to do. It's almost like you don't, if you have the like the base principle of whatever goes, that we don't even need to, bless you. We don't even need, bless you. We don't even need to like consider these things. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, how far are we going to push this thing before we just accept that everyone is whatever they want to be? You're like, are we just going to delete this in the future? You know what I'm saying? Like, we're just going to like get rid of like gender altogether. It's just like, we're just looking at the biology. Because I can foresee a point where it's like way too much. That's why they put the plus in there. It's like, okay, if none of this falls under that category, we're just gonna add you the plus.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, what do you think? Where do you think we're headed? Or
I think where they want to be headed is more just inclusive, right?
Right, but like, it's almost like, if to be really inclusive is to be indifferent, right? It's like, do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
You know, but in the pursuit of inclusivity, you're adding so many solid definitions. Like I was like, oh, well, like cisgender is a whole new term I need to learn, and that's what I am, right? Or it's like, you are a male who was born a male and is heterosexual. So it's like, you made it 3 layers, you know, like 3 identification points for this one word.
Yeah.
But then it's like, what about other variations of identification states, you know? I don't know, I thought that was kind of weird. And like, even colloquial terms like, hey guys, it's like, you almost have to delete that now, because like, guys is a identification state that you might not fall under.
Yeah, I think that's where it gets tricky, because it depends on what you define as guys.
See what I mean, right?
Yeah.
But then it was good that the government does actually have a standardized definition for everyone. So that was cool. Because it's like, all right, now we're all like talking about the same thing. But I'm just wondering, like, what is the point of diminishing returns? You know, it's like, if somebody comes up with something like, hey man, I'm this, and you're like, I've never even heard of that before. It's like, well, you disrespected me because you didn't know that I was this. And it's like, I didn't even know that was a definition, you know?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. It's like, is the way forward just deleting all of this and just being like, do whatever you want? But we're going to just keep the biological marker, because we need to know that for science.
Yeah, I mean, the biological marker is one that still stays, right?
Yeah.
These definitions are...
Yeah.
People fall into different groups here and there. That may change over time too, right?
Right. Yeah.
For the individual, yeah.
Even things like, the one thing that I noticed was missing was like the definition of parent. So like, when they were saying parental leave, that's one of the things we had to learn. It doesn't fall under just the woman anymore, because a man can be a parent as well. Like 2 men can be parents, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, but then I was like, what about dog parents? Because then where do we go with that? Because it's like, if I identify as my dog as like my kid,
right, then
that's not inclusive to me. You do get what I'm saying? It's like, where do we draw the line?
Right.
Before we just get rid of it altogether.
Yeah.
It almost seems like we're the growing pains, right? We're like, no, you got to include this. Okay, you got to include that. You got to include this. And they're like, you know what? Just throw your hands up in the air and just be like, we're just going to not assume anything, and we're just going to keep the...
Right.
Do you get what I'm saying now?
Yeah.
It makes no sense, because like, then I feel left out. Because they're talking about like...
by making sure people are not left out. That's
the point of inclusivity, right? And they're talking about like the definition of like equality. This was pretty interesting.
I think it just comes down to science. I feel like at the end of it, right?
I agree. And it's like, if you just keep the scientific biological marker, do whatever you want, because everything else is just an identification state. Like,
there was like something to do with dogs. This is a little bit, maybe slightly off topic, but there was like I was in the news the other day. It was like that I think they made a rule where they can't bring dogs in. You know how they like the rescue dogs?
Oh yeah, rescue dogs.
Rescuing dogs from like those other countries that are.
Oh, you can't do that?
If if they have had what's the thing that rabies?
Oh, prior.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
That even though you bring those dogs in to get the shots and everything, because they already had rabies, that they could still spread it.
Oh, really?
So yeah. So a lot of
I didn't know that.
there was like the vets are agreeing with that's the science, and then the people that want to
bring the dogs in.
They're like, this is not fair to them, blah blah blah. But then there's the clash of the science.
Totally. And
the science says that they can still spread it even though they had it before.
For sure. And like two things from this point is that it goes back to the whole idea of like life is just a story you tell yourself. Like whatever identification state or like story essentially you want to create in your head is totally fine. But we can't go away from science. Right? Like it was even in the training. It's like you need to know your sex just in case the medication doesn't.
Right.
Like medication wise, we need to know.
Yeah.
Right. So like just like the rabies thing, it's like we don't want to spread rabies. Like it has nothing to do with your perspective. It's literally just like we're
protecting other dogs against.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I feel like we always have to fall back to science. Even like things like energy healings, right? For like, I mean, placebo effects totally work.
Yeah.
But placebo falls under science as well because they know about placebo effects. So like, not really like when you say like science, it's more like the scientific method. It's like
yeah.
Because when people are like, oh well, this is science. It's like you can two points of view can argue over science, right? But the whole idea of like scientific method is like test, retest, prove independently. That's just like objectivity. You have to be objective about what it is you're pursuing forward, right?
Yeah.
I feel like we totally agree on this, but some other people might not see it that way as like.
No, I think as an adult you can do or be whatever you want, right? That's.
Yeah, totally. If you want to, pierce your eyeball, you can totally do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I shouldn't judge you for the things you choose to do as long as it's like not harming another, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I was just saying you can do whatever you want to yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
You want, but
there are also like laws against like self-harm,
there's depends on how much self-harm. What is that considered, right? So it's like if it's there to reach. There's self-harm in a negative sense, or like it can be different, right? Like you can go through adding a tattoo is a self-harm.
Exactly, that's what I mean. Like where do you?
But then your
the line?
outcome of that is you're more happier because you want a tattoo. It's got a different, you know what I mean?
But maybe you should allow for even self-harm, as long as you're not harming another individual.
Yeah, maybe. I guess that's where there's like that, the assisted death thing.
Yeah, they have that. But that was a big thing before. Remember, they wouldn't allow assisted suicide. That was a huge controversy, Yeah. But you can see when it's beneficial. Yeah, maybe it is really just don't like hurt other people.
It's not harming others.
Yeah. Because like, where do you draw the line for harming yourself? Who's gonna say what's harming yourself or not?
Yeah, and who's gonna stop you?
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah. Well, I mean, the government does stop you right now. Like, if I tell you like I have suicidal ideation and you're my doctor, you have to call someone.
Yeah, but that's potentially could also harm others, right? Because of
sadness.
But like I don't know what you like other types of things that are maybe not in your control, or it's like that potentially could harm others instead of not just harming yourself.
Okay.
Like I think those are the things that would be involved.
Maybe I don't know. I don't know where they draw the line.
Yeah, but that's again based on the science and
the legal definitions.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's weird when like a small group of humans tries to govern a larger group of humans. It's almost like we don't trust you to manage yourself, so we need to set out these guidelines, which is true though. Like I feel a lot of people. Like, I feel like on the whole, we couldn't self-govern as effectively as if we let a smaller group do it for us. Because, all right, so for example, if there were no traffic lights, right? Because that's like a small group setting structure for a large group,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then I would just run the traffic light, and then who would go first or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
You almost do need that parent watching you in life.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, I get that.
because how would we function if we all got into like a 4-way stop? Who's going to choose who's going to go first?
Mm-hmm.
But there's like a law for that.
Yeah, there's a rule for it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the more you think about it, it's like humans really are herd animals.
Yeah, or else chaos, right? That's why we need the.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But before like jumping into the second part of that training that I thought was really interesting in terms of structure, I find that, like, at least for myself, I do really well with like structured tasks, like time blocks. Like, all right, so example, I'm like a hyper planner for my time. So it's like from this time to this time I'm doing this, from this time to doing this, and this time, you know what I mean? Like I structure it out and I just execute the plan according to what's on paper, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I found that during COVID, when I was like in between jobs, I was like, what do I do with my time? You know what I mean? Because it's like, you could do anything. So then if you have too many options, it's almost like the chaos ensues, and like human beings are, we require some level of structure, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was noticing that about myself. Even like going to the gym now, right? I'm like, okay, adding this structural component, it's like forcing myself to follow structure makes my discipline muscle stronger for other things.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because like discipline's a muscle. It's like a mental muscle, right? And like the more you exercise that muscle, the better you get at executing on that thing. Because you're like, no, I'm doing this from this time. Just like comparatively, because I noticed that I get I'm very productive, like hyper efficient in my day. And like, that's only because I'm hyper efficient and structured in all parts of my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whereas like, I notice that some people are not like that. And they'll get like one thing done that day. And you're like, what? Like you had like a full day to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, structure. Human beings require it.
Yeah.
But then there's also, like, to go back to the like whole gender idea, too much structure is also really bad, because it's like, or is that would you consider that structure, or is that like definitions?
I think it's just definitions. I don't think it's.
Yeah, it's not really like. It's more like categories.
Yeah.
Like structure is more like, I'm doing this for this time, this for this time, this for this time. You know.
Yeah.
So the other part of that training, which is interesting, is I learned about like intersectionality. So what that is like, for a human being, all right, this is what I likened it to. And I was like, oh, I see where you guys are going. Think about like character hit points, you know, like attack, defense.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying, right? Like you have a character and like their attack levels here, their defense levels here. So what they're introducing is like this thing called intersectionality, where gender, your race, your sexuality, your culture, like all these components make up a human being now. But it's like, if you played video games, didn't you know that before? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, it's like, I just keep seeing more parallels to our transition to the online world.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like the fact that they call it intersectionality, it's like all these elements affect you as a human being. It's like, of course they do. Like, who didn't know that, you know? Yeah. I don't know, like, maybe that's like conspiratorial on my end, being like, we're slowly pushing ourselves to the online world. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I think it makes sense. Though. We're surrounded by the online world, right?
Yeah.
So we're gonna be more. I feel like it's not. It's a mutual thing where it's like, because of the online world that we're in now, and how that's going to affect our real world too, because it's now we're together.
So it's not really like we're pushing ourselves towards there. It's like a symbiotic relationship. It's like one affects the other.
Yeah,
I could see that. Yeah,
because from the internet, so that's where you find your groups, right?
Yeah, facts. Because how did you even know that? Like, let's say you were in a homogeneously heterosexual area. how do you even know about non-binary?
Yeah.
You would have like Googled that.
Yeah.
Like nobody, if everyone in your circle is heterosexual, right? And they all identify as like, and they're all cisgendered.
Yeah. So you feel like something's wrong with you.
And you're like, oh, what's going on? But then you Google it and you're like, oh, other people feel this way?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the access to information. Yeah, you're right. It is like a symbiotic relationship. It's like, as you find out more through the digital world, the more it's affecting your real world. And then the laws in the real world are affecting the laws in the real world are being affected by the digital world as well. Like they're mirroring each other now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is like, I don't know, it's just interesting to see like the whole idea of intersectionality. I was like, oh, they're like playing cards. They're like character, like, you know what I mean? Like when you're playing a role-playing game or like.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, but you don't really encounter this kind of stuff?
Encounter in what sense?
Like what, like having to do trainings like that or?
No.
Yeah, maybe it's just the industry that I'm in, you know?
Yeah. I know. I think in a lot of places they will probably implement these things, but it depends on how big or what exactly the field is and things like that.
Right. Yeah. You know what would actually be so easy if you just like adopted this viewpoint? If you took the Taoist viewpoint, which is like it's all a part of nature, then it wouldn't seem weird. All of these things, you know, it's only like Abrahamic religions and all that create like these structured ideas of like man must be with women and like you must bear children, blah blah blah. It's like if you take like a Taoist view, which is like it's all just a part of nature and it's all just happening, then there'd be no argument. You know, it's like, oh, I like the same sex as me. It's like, okay, it's nature.
Right.
You think we'll ever hit that? Like that, like, you know what I mean? It's like we're inching more and more towards that viewpoint. Like even things like just like respecting nature now.
Yeah.
Right? Because before we used to like destroy the land to get our product, and now we're like, oh, we can't actually do that. We need to work in unison with the land. That's what like regenerative farming is.
Yeah.
But that's like Taoism in a nutshell. It's like work in harmony with everything.
Yeah, I mean, we will always change based on whatever is going on, right? So we saw there's an issue with the way we're farming. So there's going to be people that are looking at
yeah, for sure.
solutions and things like that.
I wonder if the end goal is going to be like some form of Taoism at the end of it.
Yeah, but I don't know if there's ever an end of it, but you know, we go through phases.
But
we go through changes.
The end would be a full acceptance of whatever. Like it is what it is. Like that literal coining of like it is what it is like the epitome of Taoism.
Right.
So that almost seems like the end goal to me. You know? And I wonder if like this is the growing pains to that point.
Sure.
Could you see it or no?
No, I can see that. To that point, yeah. But what happens next?
Then the barbarians that they gave, like we talked about before, they're too soft now. They just kill all of us. Yeah. All right. So, anything else on that point?
No.
All right. So NASA released its newest image of the James Webb Telescope. Yeah. I thought that was so fascinating that, like, if you showed me that video, right, that morning of Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about how, like, it's like on a grain of sand. Yeah, like the image, the size of this like part of the sky that they've taken this image is, if you pull out like a grain of sand and you know stretch it out. Yeah, hold your arm out with the grain of sand. Yeah, you hold your arm out with the grain of sand. That's the area that they pictured. Yeah, if you put that against the sky. Yeah. And in that picture was so many stars and galaxies. Yeah, not unlike our own, is what he said. So like you never know if one of those has life on it as well. Right. And so I started sharing that around, and one person was like, it's interesting people's responses though. Like some people were like, oh, this is amazing, this is so fascinating. And then one person wrote that they were too afraid of the actual size of the universe, so they won't be clicking on the link that I sent. And I was like, oh, that's really fascinating, because it's like, what does that say about you? Yeah. You know, like when you realize how big the universe is, you realize how small you are. And can your mind take the fact that it is so insignificant? You know, even comparatively to like the Earth, right? Or like, okay, the Earth has, 7+ billion people on it. So if you think about that, you're like, oh, I'm very small in comparison.
Right.
Now we extrapolate. Okay, and your Earth is one of billions or trillions or zillions within the universe. It's like, how small do you feel now?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then like, either that gives you some sort of peace or it freaks you out. You know? Interesting. But I find that like, I felt that too. Remember you used to always stare at the sky?
Yeah.
You love that. When we were kids, we'd be like outside like 2 a.m. You'd be like looking out at the sky. And I would never, it freaked me out every time because it's like, oh, this thing is vast. I can't look at it.
Yeah. But I think that's how you, for me, it was more like looking up, being that, yes, that we're so small, but that I'm at this point where I can actually like conscious enough to understand that. Right? Like,
yeah, okay.
And that that I'm able to experience this world. Being alive, right?
Yeah. You know what's actually really interesting? So they talk about, I read this article before on like spiritual experiences are based off of awe. If you can create awe in someone, like wonder,
right?
That's the bedrock of a spiritual experience, right? And even though you haven't had like deep psychedelic experiences, you came to the same conclusion through awe, right? You were looking at space and you're like, wow, that's amazing. And like, oh, I am tiny in this little thing, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas most of us like walk around with blinders on of like shielding our mind from our insignificance, you know? Or even things just like talking about death, like, oh, you're going to die one day. Like that creates such a shock to the system.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like NDEs, the near-death experiences, are a big thing for people to like revamp their lives, right? They need a shock to their system, like, to realize that it could all end in a second. But like it's right in front of your face. It's like you just didn't think about it. You know what I'm saying? It's of course we'll all die in any second, you know. But because we pushed it so far out of our minds, we've like been crippled to the idea, and that crippling is what creates maladaptive behavior.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Because then you start hoarding things, or like, I don't you think you're gonna live forever?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, the thing that always, like, when you look at the sky too, everything that you're seeing is also may not exist anymore.
No, yeah, for
right?
sure.
What you're looking at is the past.
Yeah. That's really trippy.
Right? And so we could already be dead. And we're in someone else's.
Oh,
they're looking at us.
No, we literally are already dead.
Yeah. But like they're looking at, our
True.
solar system, and it's in their past, right?
That's a psychedelic experience. Like no, like literally, like that perspective. Like I mean, they even come up with terms for it, like high talk, right? But we can actually enter into these states of contemplation while sober, but it's only in those psychedelic states where you can't control it. It's like it's just happening, so you can't run from it anymore, right? Because like, all right, so you're telling me this right now, and I'm like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. And then you're running from it.
Yeah.
But with like, that's why I'm an advocate for psychedelics for some people. If you take it, you're not going to you can't run from it. Your mind's just going to keep fixating on that thing, you know? And like that, and that's why so many people have like profound experiences, but you know, it's like these are common thoughts, just thoughts that nobody keeps thinking about after a certain age, right? Like when you're a kid, you think about this.
Yeah.
But then there comes a point where it's like, I gotta get a job, I gotta get bills, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, and then you start like deleting that from your mind.
Yeah.
Or like pushing it out.
Yeah, wonder leaves, and you're just more stuck in reality, kind of thing.
Yeah. But yes, you're right. Wonder leaves, and that is the foundation for like being childlike forever. Like like in yoga stuff or like spiritual things are like go back to the wonder of a child.
Yeah.
Right. But they're only saying that don't be childlike though. Like
no.
Be childlike, but don't be childish.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And that's only because when you're a kid, everything is like awe-inspiring. You don't even know what this world is. But then you hit this point where you're like, oh, I know what this is. Oh, I've seen this before. Oh, I know how this is going to turn out. You know, and then you start building a sense of like not cynicism. You're like cynical about everything or like jaded about the world.
It could be, yeah, depends, yeah. Like at a certain age, kids are just asking questions why.
And then the parents are like, oh, well,
like hundreds of why.
Exactly. But we stopped doing that at a certain point. Like, you know, there's like, there's no precursor for becoming an adult. There's no rite of passage.
Right.
If you look at the Agoge for the 300, you'd have to do these trials to like be considered an adult. In Africa, they have the fire ants inside your hands, inside the thing you put your hands in.
Yeah.
I think you showed me that, the fire ants.
Maybe. Yeah, it's like even in Dune. Dune was kind of like.
Oh yeah, Dune.
That's kind of, I think, where they got the idea from, probably. Like putting his hand in and then
in the box. Yeah.
It's kind of like that with the fire ants, I guess.
Right. You need to test your adulthood, but we don't really do that. And we have this arbitrary number, which is like 18. You're like, oh, you're an adult now.
Yeah.
It's like, what do I know?
Yeah.
Like, what have I experienced enough to know about the world? You know? And I feel like you also have to know both sides of the coin, what it's like to have things and not have things, because then you appreciate having things, you know?
Yeah.
Because like a lot of people who think they're being spiritual, it was actually in White Lotus, the show. So the daughter was being very like woke, you know. She's like, oh, we stole everyone's land and like now we're just oppressors and stuff, blah blah blah. Like the white daughter, right? And then the white father was like, oh, okay, so how are we gonna solve this? You want me to give all our money back? And it was like, well, we can't do that.
Yeah.
So you need like a bit of the jading, but not forget about your wonder. It's like a weird balancing act, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's why, you know, Buddhists believe in the middle path, because it's like, it's not one or the other. It's like, yeah, your ancestors did steal this land, but you're also benefiting from it. So what are you going to do about it?
Right. Yeah. And we're here now.
We're here now. It's like, I didn't do those things, but acknowledging like, yeah, that did happen in the past. Yeah. You know, but the past is the past. Like, how are you going to move forward? You know?
Yeah. I would say it's more like acknowledging the past and then finding solutions to the problems that we have now.
Or yeah, for sure, I agree with you. But what about like one thing is like that's big now is like land acknowledgements, right? Like I acknowledge that I'm on Native American land and this was stolen by the colonials. Like we have to like start these, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you're giving me lip service. What are you gonna do about it?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, actions need to be taken.
Yeah,
not just
it's
words.
Like, okay, and now you know. So what? It's like I'm going to give you this free 30-second spiel about how I understand that happened in the past. But what is my reparations? You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I find it weird. It's like going to church, asking for forgiveness, but then robbing someone else later on.
Right.
Oh, I'll ask for forgiveness later.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's crazy to me.
Yeah.
It's like we are running off of like superficial scripts.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's all in the government you choose, I guess. That's who's trying to.
But how do we move? Like, how does one move forward from that? Like, all right. I'm just gonna ask you an open-ended question because I don't actually know the answer. How do you solve the Native American issue? Or that's actually the wrong word to say because they don't like that anymore because it has American in it. The indigenous issue.
Well, I think it's not just one issue, right? There's multitudes of issues within that
yeah, for sure
we have to deal with, and I feel like it's more like I would say local oriented that you have to focus on, right?
Okay, so how would you?
that would be like, this has to be like, I as an individual can't do anything, but as a government they can, right?
Okay, so what would the solution be on an individual level?
Our individual level is by voting for people that would.
Okay, fair. Okay, I can see that. Yep. Because, all right, so I'll give you one of the things that they kind of make us do is like, you have to make these pacts where it's like, I will read 5 indigenous books, or I will listen to more indigenous music.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
But that also feels superficial. It's like, yeah, you can read about it. You can like their stuff on Instagram. You can follow them, but it's
but you don't have to necessarily. Yeah, I understand that. But I don't think you need to
like that music either.
Yeah, I don't think you need to do those things. I feel like if you're, I feel like in order to actually make change is by picking leaders that are talking about those issues that you are pushing for those types of things to make changes in those communities.
Yeah. Okay, I see that point.
I think that's the only way that you can do it right now. Right.
But then, do you also notice that most leaders are colonials?
No, it's not about most leaders. Yeah, that's how you pick, right? So it's like
but like within our government, like we'll talk about our government right now. It's all just like white people.
No, it's whoever's running, right? In power, yeah.
No, of course, anybody can run.
Yeah, but I'm talking about whoever is running, right? Who you're voting for in those types of run and in those types of things. Yeah.
But the people in power, it's like they're all of one perspective.
Yeah. So generally, what's happening also is like, who is voting, right? So if a lot of people are not voting, right? If the ones that are voting are mainly white people, then you're going to get more of a white people
perspective. Yeah.
Perspective in the government.
Yeah.
Right, like how Ford, for Ontario, Ford winning, but many people did not vote. The ones who did vote are most likely white older people.
But right, for sure. So it's like almost like they're holding on to a dying system. But who else is running that isn't white in the highest parties of government?
Yeah,
aside from Jagmeet Singh. Aside from Jagmeet Singh, who else is running?
No, they all get picked from within the party, right? It's not like someone just, I'm going to be
just run?
No.
Oh, okay.
They're chosen
as like
they voted on, like, so whoever
captain, Okay. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So then that also begs the question of like
that's why right now we don't have a conservative leader, right?
Interesting.
They have a race internally. So if you are a conservative member, you could vote.
Okay, but then doesn't that speak to the idea that it's like, if you can vote, then why are they all voting internally for one race primarily?
Well, how can you're just saying Jagmeet was someone that's not of the white race, right?
Just one.
Yeah.
So like one out of, I don't know, how many?
Yeah, sure. That's up to the
so it's almost like you guys need to catch up to speed. So it's like, okay, if you really want to make change, then you have to work. It's like the idea of you have to work twice as hard compared to another person who's like white. You have to work twice as hard if you're colored because there's less of you.
Yeah, and it's up to who wants to run, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So it's like who's also putting their foot into wanting to run. So if there's no one showing up, Jagmeet did put his foot in, right? So it's like the other people put their foot in.
Okay.
Who's willing to take the chance to? Because once you're it's not an easy job too, right?
Once for sure. No, I totally agree.
Once you're in there, you're daily being attacked.
For sure.
Can you handle those sort of things? Yeah.
I'm just wondering, because we're talking about like systemic barriers, you know, and is this just one of those barriers that's also there, but we're not addressing? Like, all right, you have 20 people running to be in office. Only one of them is non-white. So then that person has to work 20 times harder
as a federal, in a federal, but you're saying in a federal level, yeah. We have local governments, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But they have to work their way up to get to that federal level, right?
If they want to be in a federal position, but a lot of things happen within local governments, right? Yeah, and a lot of people that are running in local areas are more inclined to be how the local people are like, right?
So essentially, they more BIPOC people need to work in systems of government and work their way up.
Yeah, that's gonna, yeah.
In order to see change, and that we need to vote for them.
Yeah.
So it's like a slow grind process because most
It's a
of
slow
it's
thing.
already.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what's an interesting thing about it? How many people even know how that works? Like, I didn't know, and then you just told me. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. You know what I mean? Like, the indifference when it comes to politics is so
No, I get
unreal.
that, but then that's what I'm saying. If you want to make change, you got to know.
Yeah, how to make change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you're just yelling about change, then how do you know how you're going to fix it if you don't know how to fix it?
Yeah, fair point. Yeah, fair point. And then are they even really the biggest change makers? People in government, or is it more
Yeah,
on
like
the
in
commercial
policies
level?
that they are fighting for. If they're not if you're not, generally what happens if you're not going through with the policies that the people want, they will not be voted in. That's how it always happens.
But like, who, there's always like this battle between like commercial sector and government sector, right? Like, who's really in power? Is it governments or is it the companies?
No, I'm saying that who are making these laws. So like that would be in government, right?
For sure. But like,
So like maybe making, so for instance, making rules like for like environmental stuff. That's government.
okay, yeah, for sure. Okay,
Right.
like,
So if a company is dealing with a lot of chemicals, maybe they were like, before they're like dumping in the lakes. Now they can't do like that, right?
yes, yeah, I see your point. But that's why it forces them to go to like other countries like China where it's legal, and then you're giving their
So you gotta
economy the
implement
power.
these types of. They were saying, yeah, but if you want to like not pollute the lake, right? For instance, right?
Right. Yeah.
So those rules are not made from the businesses. Those are rules made from the government,
Right.
and,
Right.
but based on who we were voting on, right?
But then the indirect effect on the people because of the change in economics within the country. Well, what I'm trying to say is like, I personally think that it's more businesses that change things than governments. I think governments do influence it, but at the end of the day, I think it's businesses. I could be wrong. That's why I'm like asking you. I'm just like wondering what
it
your
depends.
point
I
of view
think
is.
I think it depends. I don't think it's like one or the other. I feel like there are things that
Okay.
if businesses want to have good relationships with the local community, they could do that. Yeah.
All right. Let's take gas for an example.
Yeah.
So gas prices are really high because there's a carbon tax.
Sure.
So the gas companies aren't dropping their prices. They're like, no, these are the prices. So what government had to do was drop the carbon tax to get the prices a little lower.
Yeah.
So it's like, who was really in power there? Like the government yielded to a consumer thing.
Yeah, no, I think pricing is a bit different, right? Like for instance, like how much you can't deal with like pricing and stuff. That's like OPEC is a whole different thing, right?
Okay.
It's a whole different ball game. It was the Ontario's Conservative Party that removed that carbon tax or whatever, which will alleviate the pain a little bit. I think didn't the federal government give some money just recently about some carbon
Maybe I got
relief
like
too.
I got a payout from the government for some like green energy thing. I didn't even know what it was. I was
Yeah,
like, oh, cool,
is like
$180.
carbon relief or whatever. Yeah, so they all.
Oh, okay,
There's another
okay.
check that went out.
That's what that was. I was like, how do I get this money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And each depends on the family, your income and family, how much you get.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right, but to circle back on it, it's like, it seems like companies are still sovereign powers despite the government. Right. Okay. Like the government's like, hey, more inclusivity.
Mm-hmm.
The company can or cannot comply with that. It's up to them.
Yeah, it depends, and then if it goes under human rights regulations and these sort of things, right? There are things that if their government is not following the rules, certain rules, or the company's not following the rules, you can take them to court, right?
Yes, you can. I don't know. I'm just wondering, like,
I feel like it depends on what you were talking. Like it depends on the situation.
okay, I guess. I don't know. I'm just like a firm believer in business. That's why.
No. Yeah, I agree with capitalism and business, but like also,
Like I feel
with capitalism, they would prefer you to work all 7 days. Let's say.
Oh, yeah, fair. Right. So it's almost like the companies are chugging forward, and the government's like, "Hey, let's
We're here to
slow down,
we
put
want
some
to
barriers."
help the citizens
Interesting.
as well,
Maybe
right?
that's the relationship. It's like government's really there as like a um like a like a barrier. Like just don't get too out of hand.
Yeah,
And then the companies like play within those barriers.
yeah, and then that's where like you don't want too much monopolies, right?
Yeah.
Which will also be affecting capitalism or business in a way. So
Okay, so I
those are
bring,
things that are
yeah, I hear your point. I bring this up because I'm like, who do you yell at? Do you yell at the government to like change their policy, or do you yell at the company by boycotting them and all that to like change their ways?
yeah, that's business. If you don't like their business, you don't go to them.
But you have like specific amount of energy points. Where's the most effective outlet for your energy points to see change? You think it's voting?
I think voting has a big impact. Yeah. For instance, like especially with the U.S. with the abortion thing. All that happened because Trump was in office, right? He's the one who elected those Supreme Court leaders, and now.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, true. Maybe it is the government that has. I don't know. I just like I was so convinced that it was businesses because I found out that like businesses like they contribute so much to the GDP. So
they are together. Yeah, they are together. Like businesses are good for, like the country's economic health and everything, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And people like get money out of politics.
Yeah.
Right. So I was like, okay, so businesses are the problem. That's my framework.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like,
but like think about think about like since the abortion thing happened in the U.S., then there's a lot of these other companies like I think it was like Netflix or Facebook, Apple, and are like they will pay for or like they'll get better insurance to be able to
fly out if they need the abortion.
Yeah. But why do they do that though? It's also they save money.
Wait, what? Who saves money?
Yeah, because they don't have to pay for paternity leave.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. It's more.
Wow, that's actually super interesting. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, because then you have to pay out. Because that's a huge hassle. You have to rehire somebody.
Yeah.
Retrain them just for the 1 year and then like let them go. Yeah, interesting. I didn't think about that. There's always like layers to it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Businesses only want to save money.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Save money and make money, right? So
it's like would this be a fair analogy? Like if we're playing baseball, the businesses are like the players and then the government's like the umpire.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that reframed it in my mind. Anything else about
No.
Well, I mean, like I exhausted my topics for this week, but I did want to get into Elon Musk and his like growing controversies. We talked about it like last week as well, but just it was still like top of my social media feed, and I'm like where are you gonna go with your image now? I feel like he's become attacked so much in the media that like to say you're an Elon Musk fan now that people have like this like double perspective on you. You know what I mean? Like I'm a huge fan of Joe Rogan, so like I post a lot of stuff. And even my mom, like when Joe Rogan was going under fire, my mom was like, "Oh, you listen to that podcast guy? Oh, he's so bad." I'm like, "You don't even know anything about him," But like I feel like they're doing that with Elon Musk now too. Like,
yeah. But he's been, I mean, on my social media feeds, he's been pretty relatively quiet, I'd say.
Quiet, yeah. But like
he himself.
But saying like you're a supporter of him now is kind of like, it's got like a weird.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. It changed over time, here and there. Someone else will be the bad guy.
Yeah. Do you think it's like solely because he's the most like richest person in the world?
Well, yeah, they're gonna keep looking into him. No one has a clean slate, right? So.
No, but like, do you think it's solely because like he is?
Oh yeah.
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 Rich and like outspoken.
Yeah. Yeah, when you're not hearing about Jeff Bezos, you're not hearing about
Oh, that's
Tim Cook.
true. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, Jeff Bezos. Because that was a big thing, right? Like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, well, but what was the big thing about Jeff Bezos when he had the divorce and the amount of money that he had to give his wife, right? That was the big news.
True.
But, you know, he's relatively quiet in
And
general.
how bad he treats his employees at Amazon and stuff.
Yeah, that happened at those times. But, like, but in general, there isn't much to talk about him because he's not really outspoken
Oh, that's
in
interesting.
the public, right?
It's like such a double-edged sword, eh? You want to
You can, as a
society.
yeah, and like as a billionaire, you have influence, right? And anything that you say, any small thing or not, you don't really have freedom of speech in a way, right? Because any little thing that you
Yeah.
say is then scrutinized,
Isn't
can be
that
scrutinized.
weird?
Yeah.
You hit a certain point of popularity where you as an individual have no rights anymore. No, you have rights, but it's like the ramifications of your decisions are so dire at a certain point.
Yeah.
You know, like even how he like did the stock market thing, you know, just like doing that tweet, boom, changed everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, weird,
Or
right?
even the Bitcoin thing, right? So anything he could say just affects the whole market, right? That's the
yeah. Yeah, crazy. It's like to wield so much power, you know? Like Joe Rogan was talking about that. He's like, if I change who I am just because I'm pop, because people are like, oh, you have a voice now, so you need to like be like considerate of your, like what you say and do, you know? And he's like, well, then I wouldn't be as successful because that's how I got successful, you know? But then it's like, do you have a obligation at that point? Like, wait here, let me ask you this question. Not from his point of view, Let me ask you, like, let's say, imagine we have like 1 billion listeners. Okay, we don't, but if you had 1 billion listeners, would you adjust what you say, or would you just still speak candidly?
I think it would still be. I don't think it would be as candid. I feel like we'll have to be more. What we're talking about, make sure that we're actually right into what we're talking about.
Exactly. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Anonymity gives you freedom.
Yeah.
Whereas, like free speech only applies if you're anonymous or like you're small enough.
Yeah.
But when you're singled out in a crowd, free speech is not a thing anymore.
Well, I mean, by law, you still have the free speech, but the thing is that your influence of other people will have big impacts, right?
Yeah.
So that is something that you do have to think about.
Interesting. Right? Like, it's almost like a double-edged sword. Fame is a double-edged sword. Yeah. And another thing I heard that was really interesting, it's not really related to that, but America is an experiment in self-governance. I didn't think about it like that.
Yeah.
Right? It's like democracy came from America, right? They popularized it.
Sure.
Right? And that's like a 200-year journey.
Yeah.
Right? We were looking at the timelines before. I don't know if we mentioned on the podcast, but when America was actually founded, how many years was that? It was like 300 most, something like that.
Yeah, probably the start of it, like when they've, but like founded as, like unified as America was probably at just over 200 years ago.
Yeah, and then that's when government systems and like structures like voting, all that.
Figuring out all that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you look at the actual timeline of, human history, this is a relatively short amount of time, but we don't think of it as a short time because we were born in the middle of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Isn't that a trip? Imagine if you were like, if the lifespan was like 300 years and then you saw America get built and then now you're watching what it's become, you're like, you'd have a better frame of reference as like, oh, this was just a short experiment, because most of human history was not run like this.
Right. Yeah. Because they wanted to really step away from any monarch systems, right?
Yeah,
they wanted
totally.
the people to
separation of church and state too, right?
Yeah.
And when you think about it like that, I think that answers my question. Like, I only recently heard about this, the experiment in self-governance. That actually that answers my question as to why I was saying it feels like kingdoms is the best way to do it. because I was looking at history and I was like, why are we having so many clashes now?
Well, I mean, the reason they left was because...
No, of course.
Right.
Like you said, like that was your point. It's like, well, we evolved into this.
Right.
This like democratic system. I don't know. It's like, will it turn out to be the best way forward or not? I don't know.
No, I think that as a democratic system that we can make changes to rules, to laws, right?
Okay.
I feel like under kingdom, it's like you're following a family.
For sure. No, but with the kingdom, at least you're successioned in.
No, I know, but you're just following whatever the family wants. If there's like a bad,
okay, I see what you're saying.
Bad, like ruler.
But that's why in France they, killed the.
Sure, but that doesn't happen everywhere, right? Necessarily.
Yeah, fair point. You're right. Moses tried that, right? He went to Egypt, was like, "Let my people go." Yeah, so it doesn't always work.
Right. Yeah. So it depends on how much power they have or not have, right? So, and how much can you convince the whole population to go against them, and how often does that happen?
It's almost like when you look at history, there are these points of no return. Like when you really think about it, right? Like the invention of electricity, point of no return.
Yeah.
We're going forward with this.
Yeah.
Democracy, we're going forward with this. What else? Internet, we're going forward with this. And it's like you can't go back. You can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. They're just always moving forward from whatever it is.
Yeah. Utilizing that new technology or that new frame of reference. Interesting.
Yeah.
Because then you never know where it's like, what's the next disruptive technology that's going to change? Like,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And it is weird to think of it like that. It's like, for most of human history, everything was like kingdoms, and then America got formed, and then you're like, oh, this is a whole new way to do things.
Yeah, and from America came a lot of bunch of different
just where
things, right?
Internet, technology, all that stuff came from, right?
Which is all recent years.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah.
But that's because the slogan of America, like this is a new world. You want to go there too.
Oh, okay. You know what's
have
actually
opportunities.
You know how they're like we were like monkeys in trees, right? And then all of a sudden they couldn't figure out what it was that made us intelligent enough to start forming into societies and stuff. And like it's been like debated by scientists for so long. Like, oh, was it the mushrooms that made the monkeys think outside the box? Was it like cooking with fire? Was it the opposable thumb? Like, what is it, right? Maybe it's none of those things. Maybe it's just like the accidental progression of one thing that speeds up over time. We just don't realize that there are these disruptors that can change things so quickly.
Right.
Like, cause like from America started everything, like internet, electricity, space travel.
Well, yeah.
What space travel before America? No.
No, I mean, there was competition between Russia and America.
Yeah, but the competition, like, okay, so...
You mean getting to the moon? Or?
Yeah, like competition.
Yeah, but these are all less than 100 years ago, right?
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like, we think it's like thousands of years of evolution to like get us from like how did we form into this, what we are now? It's like, maybe it doesn't take thousands of years. Maybe it just takes like one disruptive idea.
Yeah, and I think America was a disruptive idea, right?
Yeah.
In general. Compared to other...
Exactly, yeah. They like literally left.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of times with kingdom, you want to just keep it the same, because then you keep power.
Yeah.
You can't do changes.
But isn't that scary, though? Like, how disruptive things can change with one small thing?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
it's a trickle-down effect kind of thing, yeah.
It's almost like, who knows, in like 30 years, we might actually all be living online, and then it's indistinguishable from... like the way we live our lives 30 years from now, like fully online. It's like we couldn't even fathom, living in Roman times.
And we keep going, and I think the progression keeps getting faster and faster.
Faster and faster. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Maybe it was something super innocuous, like that made us go from like tree monkeys to like human beings. Because like all these things were super innocuous. There wasn't like anything that was like, like it was like small disruptors that launched huge things.
Yeah.
Electricity was a big one because like allowed us to power things. The invention of like the car, you can go longer distances.
Yeah.
Right. But like innovation is at such light speed, right? Because like if you actually look at history, right, for like thousands of years, Rome.
I just want to bring something up because I remember that just because you brought up the car and driving, and I think Neil deGrasse Tyson tweeted something where it's like the price of gas like 50 years ago to today, and we drive. I think technically we're paying less because we can drive even longer and further.
Okay.
And cars are even more efficient.
They're equivalent?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's interesting to think about. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're paying even cheaper, I would say, before, right?
Yeah, if it was relative to that time.
Yeah. It's like because before too, the cars weren't as efficient. The distances weren't as big as what we have today.
Right. Yeah. You can go far with a car.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so trippy to think about, actually. Like, just the simple fact that within this, like, less than 100-year time span, look how far we've come.
Yeah.
But then Rome, Greece, they were around for thousands of years.
Yeah.
But they didn't have our level of...
Right, yeah.
Right?
So
like,
how much is going to keep changing that?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're still relatively young.
We are, and it's like nothing's slowing down. Moore's law, right? Mm-hmm. Every year, the processing power has to double, but the cost or something like that has to reduce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You would figure out the exact definition of Moore's law, but it's like it's a technological term where it's like you have to have double the progression over time,
right?
Of like power.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So where will we be? It might actually be like a completely alien. Well, this is actually hitting me right now as we're talking about this. Like, I didn't even think about this before. Because it's like our innovation speed is really, really high relative to like history.
Yeah. And now, especially, we're doing like every year, like Apple has new phones, so they have to be better than the previous years. So
that's weird. That's really weird to think about. And then that brings up more questions of like alien intervention, like you know what I mean? Like what I could see how you would think that something's driving this innovation. You know, there's this there's a line that gets tossed around a lot. It's like, we are the sex organs of the machine world. It's like the butterfly, the cocoon. The caterpillar doesn't know why it's building the cocoon, but it'll become a butterfly, right? So we are now so obsessed with technology that it's like we almost don't know that we're about to give birth to AI, and AI is going to take over. No more human beings. But we don't know why we're so obsessed with innovation. Why must we have the most latest, greatest thing? Right? There's something innate in us, like, I need this tool.
Yeah.
Weird, right? And then if we merge with AI, then it's like that's a whole new species. It's not Homo sapien anymore.
Yeah. No.
Right?
Yeah, I guess
trippy.
When that happens, like Homo sapiens are like dead. You know what I mean? Like,
essentially, yeah. Yeah, if robots can reproduce, which they saw those robots symbiotically reproducing, it looked like mud or whatever. I think I sent you the video. It looked like mud, and then they were like, this is an organic robot. You're like, what?
Yeah, that would be... Yeah.
It's almost like a freaking... Like, if this was a movie, like a horror movie, it's like from deep space, a robot sent a rover to Earth and then influenced like Thomas Edison. And then Thomas Edison got this idea, and then he like started this whole chain reaction.
Right.
You know, it's almost like that's the real invasion of aliens at that point. I'm not saying it's true, but like you can see how it would be a movie, right? Like how best would an alien take over civilization? If not through ideas. It's almost like the freaking Last of Us. The ant that had the virus.
Okay. Yeah.
And then it would like, so if you don't know what we're talking about, it's like the, what kind of ant was it? It's the...
There's a cordyceps virus.
Cordyceps, thank you. Humans eat that too, cordyceps mushrooms. It was tripping me out because like there's these mushroom powders that you can like drink for cognitive function, and I was drinking them for a bit, but they were cordyceps mushrooms, and I was like, isn't this the ant thing? It's kind of freaking me out, but whatever. So like how best to... So a cordyceps mushroom, like the ant will eat it, it'll be compelled to climb to the highest point, and then the mushroom spore will grow out of its head and then explode and then infect other ants in the area. That's how that fungus gets around.
Mm-hmm.
This is real stuff. This is not a fake.
Yeah,
This is real. And they based the video game Last of Us, the zombies, off of this concept.
Yeah.
So what if like technology was the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's invaded us, and then now we're under this zombie like, pursuit for more and more innovation till it just takes over.
Right. Yeah. Maybe.
That's like a horror movie like scenario. If we were like writing a script for something, you could use that, but also at the same time it's like that could actually be what's going on.
Yeah.
When you really think about it, it's like how much more do we live our lives online?
Mm-hmm. Everything's online,
right? And then you think about like AI advertising systems. Why is your TikTok feed so curated to what you like?
Yeah.
And then it's like pushing you in a certain direction.
Yeah, I think life is algorithm based, right? So that's what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Trippy. Trippy. And if all life is algorithm based, then it's all determined.
Yeah.
It's mathematical, But like, without getting into that, but yeah, that's actually a really trippy thing to think about. That could be the next phase of human evolution, or like destruction. That could be the Armageddon.
Yeah, probably two things. Yeah, one of those two things.
Yeah, trippy, right? Would you get it? Would you get like a chip?
Would I get a chip? I mean, I wouldn't be the first one.
No, me either, right? But like, especially if it hurt, I'd be like, no.
Yeah, I guess it depends. I think it's depends. I don't know.
Like if it was like a cell phone.
Yeah.
If the chip in the brain was like a cell phone, everyone's getting a cell phone, bro. Just get a cell phone.
I feel like it's still a hard sell. I don't know.
No, but like now it's a hard sell. Of course, now it's a hard sell. But like, let's say 200 years down the line, cell phones are like microchips in the brain are like cell phones. Would you get one? Of course.
Yeah.
Like everyone's got one. It's almost like GPS. So subtle. But it's like if I didn't have a smartphone, I wouldn't have GPS.
Right.
So you'll be like, bro, the use case is totally there. And you're like, yeah, okay. Like install in my brain. Then what's the next thing? And then what's the next thing? It's like we are going to become a robot. And we won't even realize we're becoming a robot.
Right. Yeah.
They say that about history too, like the Enlightenment period and like the Renaissance. They didn't know those were the periods until after.
Yeah.
It was like 300 years later. They're like, what happened back then? And then they would like define it as that was the period. But when you're in it, you don't know what's happening.
You're right. Yeah.
So we could be in that period right now. The transitionary period between like cyborg life.
I mean, yeah, the tests are all happening now, right?
That's what I mean, right? Like Neuralink. And then if that becomes the case, it's like we could be on the precipice of a whole new line of human evolution.
Yeah.
All right. Leave that with you to ponder and be scared about. Anything else about that, Vish?
Well, yeah, it just reminds me of like Black Mirror.
Yes, Black Mirror. Yeah, it's like trying to warn us.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, but even if I tell you what's going to happen, it's going to happen anyways. Because it's convenience. Like human beings are like obsessed with convenience.
Yep.
And because of this pursuit for convenience, of course we're going to choose these things.
Yeah.
Right? And then you're going to have like this war between the organics and the non-organics. The people that live in the forests and like camp, they live off the land.
Right. Yeah.
But they're not going to be as strong as us, as smart as us.
It's going to be it's got to take steps where it's more like we already do it, right? Wearables are that.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
Right.
That's what I mean. That's why I was like,
so we got to get more used to. Yeah. Like the cell phone is not a wearable, right? There's a breakage in the link. Like not watch is a wearable, right? That's getting more closer and closer with skin, and then
for sure. Yeah. And then it's just going to be. But I did stop wearing my my tracker. It was too much for me. It was like that's too much data. So it's almost like you need to find that balance now.
Yeah. But I feel like there's a lot more people buying it, right? So it's like,
like everyone I see is using it.
That's an individual experience that you had, but I feel like in the grand scheme of things,
oh my God! When you're like, oh yeah, everyone's buying it. Okay, ask yourself this question: how many people have opted for an Apple Watch versus a normal watch?
Apple Watch more. Yeah, they're
crazy majority.
Yeah, I see everyone having it.
Like everyone's got an Apple Watch. Everyone. You know, it's almost like you must be a watch connoisseur if you don't have an Apple Watch. It's like, why did you pick that watch? You know? And if it was that easy for most people to get an Apple Watch, how easy would it be for them to get a microchip in the brain?
Right. Yeah.
Trippy.
Yeah. Like, it's more about, like, well, it's a slow process in the sense of, I feel like it'll happen.
No. I don't think it's a slow. I think it's a subtle process.
Yeah, sure. I'll agree with that.
Because you don't know what's happening. That was just like, oh, that new Apple Watch got out. You don't have an Apple Watch, bro. You get your text on the phone, bro.
But it's really implementing on because it's more implemented on health aspects. It's actually like, I feel like that's where it's going to go. Like all these things.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Any implementation or chip you're going to add, it's going to start with health related.
Yes. Yeah. That's Elon Musk's pursuit for Neuralink. He's like, this is more for paraplegics actually versus like the consumer. But then naturally, once the paraplegics have it, then you're going to move it to consumers.
Yeah.
You know, because then there's going to be like a huge difference. If you don't know what a paraplegic is, it's like somebody who can't move their body. But then theoretically, with this microchip, they're going to be able to move their body again because the chip will send signals to the brain, whereas the spine was affected. So if that happens, then it's like, well, I want, or no, I hear example.
Like eventually we like plugging in like the Matrix and like, oh, I know Kung Fu or something like that, or like teaching you
Could
things.
be, you know, All right, so, okay, this is actually real. So I just saw this neuroscientist. They were doing this in the hippocampus in the brain is where you hold memories. Okay. So what they did is there's this person who couldn't remember anything. Right. So, what they were doing was, actually I have two stories about this. What they were doing is this person would come in, tell a joke, and then he'd be like, oh, that's so funny. Then he'd go back in, tell the same joke, and then it'd be less funny. Go back in, tell the same joke again, less funny. Every time they noticed it was getting less and less funny. Even though he couldn't consciously remember where it was encoded in his hippocampus. So he was able to, like know what was coming without actually knowing directly, knowing consciously, right? So it's like, we know that memories get stored there. Okay. So now the second question is, can you transfer memories from one hippocampus to another hippocampus? They did this with mice. So they were able to teach mice to drink in a specific, unique way, water. They downloaded that memory, put it into another mice's hippocampus, and then that mouse knew how to do it. So it's like, now we just extrapolate that. You literally could download and know Kung Fu.
Right. Yeah.
Trippy. Like actually super trippy.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's the case, who wouldn't get that? You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's like, bro, it just takes you 5 years to learn jujitsu, bro. Dude, it's going to take me like 2 seconds. Hold on, let me download it.
Yeah.
And then they're better than you.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, I need to get this chip too. Right? Convenience.
Yeah.
Trippy.
Yeah.
And then that's the whole thing. It's like, it's subtle. And then all of a sudden we're just going to look back in history and be like, oh, that's when we merged with machines. Human and machine became one. You could see it, right?
Yeah, I can see it.
I could see it too. And it's like, and it'll be so subtle, nobody will even notice. Because literally everyone wears an Apple Watch.
Yeah.
Unless you're making a conscious decision not to wear an Apple Watch.
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah. Trippy. Yeah. All right. Just something to think about. Any final thoughts about that?
No, it's interesting to see Matrix like coming
Called
back.
it.
Right.
Called
Yeah,
it, right?
yeah. I mean, like even today we're using words like red pill, blue pill.
Yeah, still, it was so seminal. Like, that thing really, boom, exploded everything. Yeah. Go watch The Matrix. Anyways. Yeah, until next time. That's actually really true. If you listened all the way through this podcast, like, that is really, like, really think about that one.
True.
We're going to be like 50 years down the line, and then you won't even notice how subtle the takeover of technology was. It's like when we were talking, it's when you mentioned the Apple Watch, and I was like, oh my God, I see everyone with Apple Watch. Bank tellers, chefs, servers, everyone.
Yes.
You know what it is too about the Apple Watch? They all look the same, so it puts us all on an even, like no hierarchy. Because watches before were used as a means to like differentiate your status, right? It's like, oh, I got a Rolex,
Right.
But now like a billionaire also has an Apple Watch. I think it's Ryan Reynolds has an Apple Watch, and I saw that and I was like, oh, that's normal. That's like, like he's not wearing like a crazy watch. He's like, yeah, I just have an Apple Watch. So then
it's all about convenience features, and I feel like that's what it hits.
Convenience, but also like uniformity. Like, I mean, we're all the same.
Yeah.
Trippy. All right. Till next time. Take it easy, Vish.
Peace.
Bye. All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, all those fun things, and check out our sponsors: Zenro Clothing Co., Portian Bakery, and Podbean. Take it easy, Vish.
Peace.